dark and violently unstable. The air was thick, heavy with an oppressive moisture that clung to her skin. The bitter taste of sea spray and the sharp, briny smell of an ocean churning with rain threatened to suffocate her. Even beneath the thick blindfold, paired with the heavy, restrictive canvas of a fire-resistant straitjacket, Azula could read the atmosphere. She could feel the sudden drop in pressure. A storm was coming. The worst type of storm imaginable. She was somewhere in the middle of the deep sea. That was all she could gather from the violent pitch beneath her. She had no idea who had taken her, how she had gotten here, or why she had been dumped into the belly of this rickety vessel. Her mind immediately jumped to the most logical culprit: her brother. The newly crowned Fire Lord Zuko had likely decided to relocate her, perhaps to some remote outpost under the guise of better treatment, or to a deeper, more isolated torment, if anyone were to ask Azula. The water tribes would probably be Zuko's first choice. The thought of leaving her kingdom didn't scare her, but it left a bitter taste in her mouth. As if being bested by a peasant waterbender and her failure of a brother wasn't humiliating enough, they had branded her insane, claiming her righteous fury and spite were signs of a broken mind. They had thrown her into chains, locking her away in a cell built for monsters. And now, the Avatar and his pathetic little gang had decided to exile her entirely, banishing her far from her home, her land, and her people. But they were fools. Although they had dethroned her father, the heart of the Fire Nation still beat with imperial pride. A century of victory, values, and a global mission couldn't be erased overnight. To the people, Zuko was nothing but a traitor crown prince installed by foreign enemies. He would find the royal court a pit of vipers, completely impossible to control as he tried to unravel 100 years of tradition. A cold smirk tugged at the corner of Azula's lips. Let him drown in his court. The satisfaction faded instantly as a series of loud, muffled crashes from the deck above shuddered through the hull. The boat rocked with a sudden, violent weight, throwing her back and forth in a chaotic, unpredictable rhythm. Every second grew more brutal. Without her sight to brace for the impact, her head slammed mercilessly against the wall, the edge of a table, and the hard floor. She was tossed across the cabin like loose cargo, the ship literally beating her from the inside out. Then, the hull gave way. Everything happened in a terrifying, instantaneous blur. Cold, violent ocean water blasted into the room, instantly choking her. It flooded her mouth, her nose, and seared her lungs with a blinding, briny heat. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't scream. Locked in her restraints, she couldn't even swim. Azula had contemplated many terrible ways to die in her lifetime, but drowning in this pathetic, helpless state had never crossed her mind. It certainly would have topped the list had she known. But Azula refused to let the sea claim her. At least, not this easily. Clenching her teeth, she held her breath and kicked with everything she had until her head broke the surface inside the cabin, gasping frantically for air. The violent rush of water tore the blindfold away. Finally, Azula could see. More than half the room was already submerged. Spotting the exit, which had fortunately been blown wide open by the immense water pressure, she swam. Her legs were still bound, but she adapted instantly. Ignoring the burning in her lungs and the agony in her limbs, she kicked with all her might toward the opening. She knew the exact structural layout of a standard Fire Nation vessel. She had memorized them since she was 5. More importantly, she had learned to swim in heavy chains at the age of 7, a brutal lesson taught by her father and the Fire Nation military. She was built to survive this. Breaking free of the sinking wreckage, Azula kicked upward through the dark, churning sea until she shattered the surface of the ocean. She pulled in a desperate, ragged lungful of air. Survive, she thought. a fierce, burning relief washing through her veins. Unfortunately, the spirits had a very different fate in store for her. The ocean went still, not calmer, completely, unnaturally motionless. The driving rain vanished into thin air. The howling wind ceased in an instant. Even the towering waves froze mid-peak, suspended in place as though the world itself had forgotten how to move. Azula frowned, her breath fogging in the sudden quiet. This wasn't weather. For the first time that night, a cold unease crept deep beneath her skin. The surface of the sea around her hardened, flattening into a pane of smooth, polished glass. Above, the dark clouds tore open, revealing a pale, swollen moon hanging impossibly low in the sky. Then, she saw herself. A reflection. No, reflections didn't stare back with independent life. Beneath the mirror of the water stood a little girl dressed in pristine Fire Nation royal robes. 7 years old, perhaps 8. Her posture was flawless, her golden eyes bright and sharp. A perfect princess. Father's favorite daughter. The child smiled up at her. Azula's stomach twisted into a tight knot. Another figure materialized beside the child. Older, 14, victorious. She stood proudly atop the captured outer walls of Ba Sing Se, blue fire dancing lazily across her fingertips. Then came the third. Broken, wild-eyed, hair hacked away in jagged chunks. She was laughing, crying, utterly alone in her madness. This final version of Azula pressed a trembling palm against the underside of the water's surface, as though trying to claw her way through the glass to drag the real Azula down. Azula snatched her eyes away. For the first time in her life, she found herself completely unable to hold her own gaze. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice sounding thin and hollow in the dead air. The ocean offered no answer. Instead, a radiant light materialized from the abyss below. At first, it was no larger than the flame of a lantern. Then it expanded to the size of a warship. Then a sprawling palace. The creature rose with a terrifying, agonizing slowness from the depths. Ancient, massive. Its scales shimmered in iridescent shades of silver and deep ocean blue beneath the low moonlight. Long, translucent whiskers drifted through the water like strands of cloud. It resembled a koi fish, yet no mortal creature could ever dream of reaching such an impossible size. Its massive golden eyes opened. The sheer pressure of its gaze struck Azula harder than any physical bending attack. Her muscles locked, her lungs froze, her mind went entirely blank. The spirit studied her in the dead silence. Not with hatred, not with pity. It looked at her with total, absolute understanding. And somehow, that was infinitely worse. The creature circled her once, its colossal body cutting through the stillness. The water followed in its wake, glowing faintly with a celestial blue light. Then, a voice echoed through the dark. It wasn't spoken aloud, it was felt directly in her marrow, ancient and distant. "You do not belong here." Azula's jaw tightened, defying the pressure. "Then send me home!" The spirit's golden eyes narrowed. Home. The word reverberated through the ocean, vibrating in her teeth. Images flashed violently before her eyes. The Fire Nation palace, her father's obsidian throne, Zuko's scarred face, heavy iron chains, a damp prison cell. The spirit waited. Azula had no answer. The creature drifted closer, its face filling her vision. "You have lost your place." The words struck her harder than she cared to admit, fracturing her pride. Before she could forge a response, the spirit opened its massive maw. Azula braced herself for rows of razor-sharp teeth. There were none. Only stars. An endless night sky stretched within the creature's throat. Bright constellations swirled across a vast universe that should not have fit inside a living thing. Primitive fear gripped her, not the fear of death, but the terrifying horror of the unknown. The spirit regarded her one final time. Then, it swallowed her whole. The ocean vanished. The moon vanished. The storm vanished. Everything evaporated into nothingness. Darkness. Stillness. Silence. And somewhere far away, beyond worlds she could neither see nor understand, something entirely new was waiting for her.